We welcome you into another edition of the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead Show. And again, we were goonless. The dear Goon still on the mend. And so Chris Buchignani once again called to duty here and ready to serve. We greatly appreciate it. And
hi, everybody.
All about the Flyers are we today?
Yeah, you see, I've got my World Series champions Phillies hat on. I got Flyers jersey. You can't see it here. I'll show you. I'm wearing Sixers pants here.
Nice.
Ironhead. Yeah, see, so I'm very excited about Philadelphia sports today.
Yeah, the Phillies, the Flyers.
The Phillies, Flyers, and 76ers.
They're all represented there. Except it feels like there's one team missing.
Oh, football. You're talking.
Football's the sport, yes.
Yeah. Well, Temple's not going to start their winter workouts here for probably a few weeks. And obviously, I'm more of a Penn State guy anyway. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think you're alone in eschewing the professional football team.
Hey, look, man, I know the audience for this show. I know there's a lot of Pittsburgh fans out there. And, look, this is obviously the Carson Wentz trade is the biggest breaking news in the NFL today. Probably one of the biggest stories of the NFL offseason. Might be the story if Deshaun Watson doesn't end up going somewhere else. We'll see what happens with the QB carousel here. But, look, whether you are like me watching in frustration, like many Steelers fans, I'm sure watching in amusement or watching with detachment, like a lot of the rest of the NFL. I mean, you got to talk about it, right? Ironhead, like this is a big deal. This was a guy who was believed by some to be a future top 5 quarterback in the league. And he was certainly being paid that way with the contract Philadelphia signed him to last year.
No question. I do think from Carson's standpoint, right, this feels like a great landing spot for him.
Yeah, sure. Yep.
If he is going to be able to get back on track with his career and rise, and that's if with a capital I and a capital F. But if it's going to happen, this feels like that's where it's going to happen with that coaching staff.
Yeah, definitely. So the big thing is he gets reunited with Frank Reich, who was Philadelphia's offensive coordinator the year they won the Super Bowl. And there was always a belief that Reich and Wentz had the closest relationship on that coaching staff at the time. Also, Press Taylor, who was another Philadelphia assistant, who was his quarterback's coach for a while in Philly. He's going to be out there as part of Reich's staff in Indy. So this is a coaching staff that knows Wentz pretty well, and he knows them. And look, one of the things that is frustrating to me, Ironhead, both around this trade and basically all surrounding the breakdown of the Super Bowl team in Philly and what happened with the relationship between Carson Wentz and Doug Peterson in the front office and who was in what position, is that the local media in Philadelphia has been so bad on this. So bad. Their coverage of this story has been largely just like, clickbaity fake news nonsense. For a while, it looked like the prevailing narrative was that there was a falling out between Doug Peterson and Carson Wentz. And so management, that being the owner, Jeff Lurie, and Howie Roseman, the GM, I'm sure we'll talk about him later, they believed in Carson Wentz. They wanted to stick with Wentz. Doug Peterson was ready to move on to Jalen Hurts, even though Hurts was a guy who Howie drafted. And so Peterson got fired as a way of appeasing Wentz. And so for a few weeks, the storyline was Carson Wentz, the fair-haired franchise boy, got the head coach, the Super Bowl winning head coach, fired. And so the word was that when Philly was hiring a new head coach, there was a precondition when you came in for the interview that you had to be able to make the case to Jeff Lurie and Howie Roseman that you could salvage Carson Wentz.
Yep.
And then less than a month later, the story came out from different insiders, team insiders, that it was the complete opposite. that Doug thought he could salvage Wentz and that ownership was already resolved to move on, and that's why Peterson got fired. Now, I don't know which one of those stories is true. Maybe neither one is the complete truth. And then we've heard all these things about how Carson Wentz was, a malcontent and that he was uncoachable and that he's very difficult. There have been rumblings from some of the team leaders who have left from that 2017 team and gone elsewhere, most notably the safety, Malcolm Jenkins, who was as solid a citizen as you're going to get in terms of locker room leadership and a great player to boot. He's now on the New Orleans Saints and was pretty frank about the fact that he felt like the organization from the top down coddled Carson Wentz. And especially after Frank Reich left, there was nobody to tell the guy no. And so the inmates were basically allowed to run the asylum from the quarterback perspective. But the problem, Ironhead, is just that I don't know what the truth is. I don't know whether this is an otherwise uncoachable malcontent who can only work with a guy like Frank Reich because Frank Reich is somehow some Carson Wentz whisperer, or a lot of that might be smoke. It might be nonsense that was fed to local Philly media looking for a story, and whether they knowingly lied or just got taken for a ride by Howie Roseman or somebody in his circle or somebody just putting out this information. The clouds of uncertainty that have been all around the quarterback situation and all around this trade in Philly have made it incredibly frustrating to follow as a fan, including right on up until today. We had heard that the Chicago Bears were a serious suitor and at one time perhaps the leader to acquire Carson Wentz's service and had offered a first-round pick. They have the 20th pick in this year's draft. And only after Wentz made it known that he didn't want to go there did the Bears pull that offer. Because, obviously, if you're a franchise making a major investment in a risky quarterback prospect, you don't want to bring a guy in who is already announcing to the world that, hey, I'm already rumored to be a malcontent, and I promise I will be a malcontent if you trade for me. Of course, you're not going to give up a first-round pick for that guy. And then after the trade goes down, Jay Glazer, who is, probably more plugged in than all of the Philly quote-unquote insiders combined, he reports that the Bears never even made an offer. So who the hell knows? Sorry, a lot. This has been pent up for a couple of hours for me.
No, I can't tell.
I will tell you this. In terms of purely evaluating the return for Carson Wentz in a vacuum, this is actually not a bad trade. The idea that they were ever going to get a first-round pick for him, I thought was ludicrous. So when I heard that the Bears had potentially offered one, I thought, well, there are a limited number of franchises that are dysfunctional enough in the NFL to potentially get taken for a ride and overpay for Carson Wentz, and Chicago is certainly one of them. So I thought, okay, maybe. But when you look at what the market value of the guy is, huge contract, injury history, one of the worst, if not the worst starting quarterback in the NFL last season. And again, all these rumors about him being difficult to coach and a problem in the locker room. The fact you got a second-round pick for him and what could turn into a first-rounder next year if he plays 75% of the snaps for the Colts next season, or 70% plus a playoff berth, both of which seem very doable. That's actually pretty solid return. So take it in a vacuum, not a bad return. When you put it in the entire context of how we got here, this is a total dumpster fire for the organization and a complete embarrassment.
Well, and to be honest with you, Booch, I don't know if so. I have some inside sources that are telling me that the Pirates actually offered 3 starters for Wentz, and I'm a little surprised that you guys didn't take that opportunity. Because 3 starters. Come on.
You know what? I will tell you what, Ironhead. I am at the point with the Philadelphia Eagles right now that if we could have shipped Carson Wentz out of town, eaten the NFL's largest dead money cap hit by over $10 million, which they're going to do anyway, and get, like a 4th or 5th rotational guy for the Phillies and maybe some guys who could compete and be live arms for the bullpen, I would have done it. I absolutely would have taken that trade in a hot minute.
I'll tell you what, if the Pirates could trade Ben Roethlisberger and get a couple of legitimate big-time starters, I think I would take that right now as well. Where are you at with Jalen Hurts? Because I that to me is now the intriguing story is,
sure.
what do the Eagles? Did they go back to North Dakota State? That would be my favorite thing. Is I'm forgetting the guy's name. Was it
Trey Lance? So
Lance?
just in case people don't understand, there are 4 quarterbacks who are considered likely top of the first round or first round guys, and one of them is Trey Lance, who is the quarterback at North Dakota State. He played 1 year.
Yeah.
But really impressive, and apparently has wowed a lot of teams in his workouts so far. But North Dakota State, of course, is the alma mater of one Carson Wentz.
I just for the storyline, I would love
it would be a hell of a thing.
But where are you at with Jalen? Because I do think I don't know how confident I'd be with it, but I mean, at this point, I don't think there's any reason to think that he doesn't have the potential to be the long-term solution there at quarterback. But again, I'm not that plugged in. But the couple of games that I did watch a good bit of this past season, I thought he acquitted himself very well. Now, so much of it to me, Booch, is what you surround a quarterback with and the chemistry. I mean, there are just so many things that factor in to a quarterback's success at this level. But is Jalen Hurts a guy that could be a top 5 guy down the road here in the NFL, or is his ceiling? More, he could be a starter, but he's not going to be one of those elite guys in the NFL. What are your thoughts based on, and I don't know that anybody has a definitive answer right now, but what are your thoughts on, riding the Hurts train for a while here versus, there's some urgency. We better get a big time quarterback here in this coming draft.
Well, I'll preface all of it by saying I probably don't know quite enough about how the guys at the top of the draft project. And I'll probably at some point spend some time looking at that. But just because, as a fan, I'm interested in it. But look, if you really, truly believe that Justin Fields or Zach Wilson or Trey Lance is a generational guy.
Yep.
I don't think there's anything that you've seen from Jalen Hurts that says you should pass that guy up because you have Jalen Hurts on the roster. I heard it put pretty well earlier today by some folks in the Philly media breaking down the trade that they were looking at the pros and cons of Jalen Hurts, and they said, good player, a lot of potential. There's a reason he went 53rd overall.
Yeah.
And I don't know what you think about this, Ironhead, but my view of the NFL right now is that if you don't have a guy on your roster as your projected starting quarterback who you think has a potential to be a top 8 guy, so top 25% of the league, I think that's a good cutoff point. You need to keep looking. I'm not saying you can't win, not saying you can't catch lightning in a bottle, but if you are ideally trying to put together a Super Bowl contender, you need a guy who's going to be a consistent top 8 quarterback.
Yeah.
And what I saw from Hurts last year, I'm not buying that he has that ceiling. Now, I will say this. I didn't see so much as to say I'm 100% positive about that. I'm going to give up hope. Yeah. Your point about supporting cast is a good one. And as hard as it may seem to believe, Philly may actually, if things go well for them on the injury front, which is always a big if, they might have an okay team to put around Jalen Hurts if they decide they're going to give him a crack at the starting job. The offensive line should be pretty solid. They've still got Miles Sanders in the backfield. Dallas Goedert, if he can stay healthy, will be a good starting tight end. And, they kind of swung and missed in terms of immediate impact in the first round at wide receiver last year. Yeah. But Jalen Reagor from TCU, he's a speedy guy, and he's viewed as a potential catch and run type of player. And what I know about Nick Sirianni's offenses is that getting guys open in space and letting them do a lot with mismatches and run after the catch is a big part of his philosophy. And so again, if they decide they're not going to go quarterback this year, they're going to get one of 3 impact pass catchers at the top of the draft. They're going to get either Devontae Smith or Jalen Waddle from Alabama or Jamar Chase from LSU. And so if he can take a little pressure off Reagor and Sirianni can find ways to better utilize his skill set, over the course of a whole season, certainly Hurts is going to be given the opportunity to grow in his second year and make a claim that he can be at least, maybe a top 12 quarterback. And if you don't love Fields or Wilson or Lance, if you don't absolutely love one of those guys, I don't think you draft quarterback just to draft quarterback, like the way the Arizona Cardinals did with Josh Rosen. And you saw the next year they had to ship him and go quarterback again. I think you say, look, we already invested a second-round pick in this guy. We have needs all over the roster. We haven't had a legit number one wide receiver in quite a while. There are a couple guys who are pretty close to sure things to be that if we take them at number 6, or you can trade back maybe a couple spots, take a guy like Kyle Pitts out of Florida, but get an impact pass catcher who can make your offense better. And then you just go with it and see, can the guy play well enough that you feel good about building around him, which is, I think, the way I'm leaning right now. But maybe as I look into it more and I learn more about Wilson and Fields, maybe I get my mind changed. Because I do think the issue is, again, I don't believe Hurts is a top 8 guy. I don't.
Yeah.
Knock on him coming in. Was he a problem with fumbling? He started 4 games and fumbled 6 times. That's not good.
No.
And so, it's all about value at the top of the draft. Do you believe in Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, or Trey Lance?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I do think, to me, looking at it, and I guess, yeah, you're right. It depends how much you fall in love as a front office with one of those guys and think that you can change the entire trajectory of the organization long term with that.
I think definitely don't reach. There are so many problems on this roster. Ironhead, don't give up draft capital to reach a quarterback. You got to absolutely be sure about the guy you are getting, right? Like, you've got to feel as good about taking that guy as Jacksonville will about taking Trevor Lawrence, or just stand pat and get an offensive impact guy at 6.
Well, and I do think it's one of those situations where, and I'm not tuned in enough to know what, like, the next couple of years have in terms of the quarterback draft, like what the juniors and sophomores are looking like
same.
across the board collegiately. But, I do think you need to take that type of a long-term view, and not to bring everything back to wrestling, but, Cale Sanderson has talked often about, the recruiting process. They are looking at a 5-6 year frame for when it comes to recruiting. So it's a situation where, and it's a little different. I mean, obviously with college wrestling, where you have 9.9 scholarships, but the idea is you're not looking necessarily for the best guy this year, right? And it's one of the reasons that Penn State has had some problems at 125, is that they are kind of not looking just to get a scholarship guy in that can win some. It's that they're looking for that guy that they think can win multiple national titles. And if you miss on a recruit there, right, then you're again back at the beginning. They've missed on a couple. I mean, they thought they had their long-term solution for that 5-year window with Nick Sirianni, and when he left, again, the situation with college wrestling, when you're talking about the elite guys, right? You can go and try to continue to recruit elite 25-pounders, but they're going to say, well, yeah, but you have Nick Sirianni there. Why would I go? I don't want to be a backup if I'm an elite guy, and Soriano is obviously going to be a national title contender. So when he left, it did set them back a while, but and now they brought in Robbie Howard, and now they have another kid coming in next year that they're going to have some competition there, and one or the other will likely eventually move up. But I think if you're the Eagles, again, it's if you think Fields or one of these other guys is the long-term answer and you're confident in that, you go for it. But if you don't, I think you look at the next couple of classes and say, listen, is it realistic, that we can find the guy for us in the middle? I mean, you're hoping, obviously, you're getting into the playoffs you can get into the middle or late rounds. And that's the other part, Booch, in terms of, and I guess, part of this is, again, what are the short-term and long-term goals, because getting to the playoffs uh, would not appear to be all that difficult that division. But if the goal is all obviously for all of these teams is to ultimately win the Super Bowl. So, how close do you think you are to that if you can get a healthy group and, you get a game-changing wide receiver. And again, you get everybody else back healthy. Do you think Jalen Hurts is a guy that can get you there if all the other pieces are there? Or at least do you want to see if that's the possibility in the upcoming season? And I think that's all obviously what they're going to be trying to decide here over the course of the next, month and a half here.
Yeah, it's a really interesting situation that they find themselves in. I think in terms of what's available in the draft, again, just because they have a number of needs. And for the longest time, we have been looking for that guy to be the star number one receiving target in Philly.
Yeah.
And there are so many good options available at the top of this year's draft. I mentioned it a little bit before. I am very intrigued by the idea that if one of those quarterbacks drops, maybe a better move for Philly is not to try to trade up to select one of them or go at 6 and take a QB, but to look at one of the teams that is directly behind them in the draft. And now, Detroit is at number 7, so they're out of the quarterback market. But I know I look at Denver at number 9.
Yeah.
As a team that if a quarterback drops down, again, still you are going to have a chance at an impact pass catcher at 9, and you could probably get a pretty good haul of picks for letting a team move up in the draft and go a few spots ahead and take a quarterback they like. And because there are so many glaring holes all over this roster, because Howie Roseman has done such a bad job in the draft the last few years, I think trading back and, again, rolling with Jalen Hurts because you already invested so much in this guy might be a better long-term play at quarterback than, giving up picks and trying to move up and get the guy you like this year. I mean, Fields or Wilson has got to really, really blow your doors off to consider that, in my opinion, because there are just so many places where the team could stand to upgrade with young talent, both in terms of upgrading production on the field and lowering cap number, because their salary cap is an absolute disaster and will be certainly this year, because $33 million of it will be encumbered by Carson Wentz taking snaps, hopefully at least 70 to 75% of them in Indianapolis. So, I mean, that's where that is.
Yeah, Fields to me is one of the more intriguing because, and listen, I'm the guy that whiffs on everything here when it comes to predictions of both how guys are going to pan out in the NFL and week to week with how teams are going to do. But Fields is one of those guys where it would not surprise me if he is a complete bust in the NFL, and it would not surprise me if he ends up being one of those, generational top 5, Lamar Jackson, Pat Mahomes type quarterback. I mean, I really have a very difficult time trying to figure out exactly where he fits in, because I think he's been remarkably accurate.
Yes.
He's surprisingly accurate with what he's done with Ohio State. I do think he has a ridiculously talented roster around him compared to the other schools he's facing. And listen, I think the Big Ten is a very good conference, right? I mean, it's not that he's been going against chopped liver and doesn't have anything to show on his resume for what he's competing against, but he has an unbelievable cadre of receivers, and he has an unbelievable offensive line and great coaches. I mean, right on down the line. So, how does his game translate to the NFL? My gut, which I think his game translates well. He seems like he's well groomed. But that being said, he is just one of those guys that, again, if he, after a couple of years out of the NFL, is just not shocking. But it feels like the accuracy has been the biggest thing. Everybody always talks about what Josh Allen, right? Was and then making adjustments he did a little accurately. So it feels, again, to me, to have that.
I'm going to jump in here. You're breaking up a little bit, Ironhead. I'll just pick up on Fields here for a moment. Well, first of all, look, nobody in the audience wants to hear me say nice things or you say nice things about an Ohio State quarterback. So I'll start.
I don't want to hear that.
There you go. All right, you're back. Yeah. So I'll start by saying something nasty about Ohio State quarterbacks. You'll love this as a Steelers fan. I don't think there's much competition, right, in saying that Mike Tomczak is the most successful Buckeyes quarterback in terms of going to the next level in our lifetime, right?
Agreed.
There are a bunch of Heisman winners, Heisman contenders, great quarterbacks, Big Ten champions, national champions. Mike Tomczak's still by far and away the most successful Ohio State quarterback in the pros of the last 45 years. That said, I do really think the things that marked Justin Fields' game stand to make him successful the way the NFL is going on offense now, in the same way that Baker Mayfield's have, whether you like Baker Mayfield or not. If you look at the history of the Browns franchise before he got there and after, it's hard to argue that they made a pretty good move in selecting him first overall. And that's that he's accurate, he gets the ball out quickly, and he's mobile enough that he can extend plays.
Yep.
But is enough of a throw-first guy that he's not necessarily going to expose himself to a ton of hits.
Right.
I think you'll see him make a lot of plays downfield, especially if he gets in an offense like I talked about Nick Sirianni running, where the whole philosophy is to get the ball out quickly and rely on the quarterback's ability to make reads and make quick throws off three-step drops and just get the ball to a spot, right? So Fields does feel like he might be a good fit for what Sirianni likes to do on offense. And there is something to be said for if you have completely hit the reset button. You are basically now in this point where you tried to maybe squeeze one more Lombardi out of the 2017 roster, and because of circumstances and largely because of injuries, you got close, but it didn't quite work out. Maybe you just blow the whole thing up and you're starting over with the youngest coaching staff in the NFL. Why not let them handpick the quarterback who's going to be their guy? Maybe even get a little something for Jalen Hurts. Probably no better than a third-round pick, probably less than that. But you get a little something back, and then you go out and you sign a Ryan Fitzpatrick type journeyman guy to be your backup. And that's that. And you just say, okay, look, this first year is going to be bad. We will have another high pick next year in all likelihood, but it is the NFC East. Who knows? Maybe we'll host a home playoff game. But we're going to let the quarterback and this entire coaching staff grow together, and that's the 5-year plan for the team.
We will take a break here. When we come back, we'll talk some Penn State sports as we continue with the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show. Again, we're coming to you remotely, but thanks, as always, Quaker Steak and Lube, and we encourage you to stop by the Lube, enjoy a great meal there, or call ahead and get a take-home order at 814-237-5823. And, of course, our thanks to Lion Country Kia, the title sponsor of the program as well. And we are back with more after this.
Get a Quaker Steak gift card.
Lion Country Kia is offering exceptional deals on your new Kia during Kia's Command the Season event.
We have a nice selection on the 2021 Kia Sportage with various options and prices as low as $26,800, saving you $3,000. Or if you demand big power and towing capacity, slip into one of the 2021 Kia Sorentos available on our lot, starting at $32,680.
Discover why Kia drivers throughout the area come to Lion Country Kia or visit online at lioncountrykia.com.
Introducing the new dusted Ghost Pepper at Quaker Steak and Lube. 11,700 SHUs of fire dusted on award-winning wings. Try it, or are you afraid of the heat?
He's not getting that car in there.
No, sir.
Hey, look at these two troublemakers.
Johnny, how are you?
Wicked car. Is that new?
Yeah, it's a Sonata. Let me park it.
Oh, you're not fitting your car in there.
Chris, stop being a smarty pants, all right? Look who's got Smart Park. Even Bruiser can park it. Just hit the clicker. I can park it anywhere.
Beaver Stadium?
Parked it.
Even the Jordan Center?
Parked it.
Even Medler Field?
Even Bruiser parked it.
Hey, you can't park there.
He's got Smart Park.
Wicked smart.
Blaze Alexander Hyundai. It's wicked smart.
And we welcome you back into more of the Lion Country Goon and Ironhead show. Again, Goonless today. Chris Buchignani, kind enough to once again fill in, and we are greatly appreciative. Booch, Penn State basketball. I don't want to dwell on the Nebraska game, but it's hard not to. I just don't know.
Let's not.
You want to see this team obviously finish up strongly. As strong as it can. I feel for the kids in that program for what they've been through this year, between everything COVID and obviously having a tremendous opportunity for this program taken away last postseason, and then the coaching change and everything else. I mean, your heart does go out to these kids, and you'd love to see them finish up strongly and rebound well. From the Nebraska loss. That loss just feels like it's going for a while, but I guess we'll see. Again, I like this team. I mean, I like a lot of the makeup of it. I like the fact that they have a lot of different guys that offensively can step up on given nights. And, for the most part, this has been a team that battles and does a lot of good things defensively, and the grittiness and everything we've talked about throughout the season. That loss was just so discouraging that it's hard even for an optimist like me to be overly excited about what the remainder of this season now is going to bring.
It's very easy for a pessimist like me to expect more of the same. Yeah. My co-host Kevin Horn just sent me a text before I got on the air here. Apparently, if this is what you're into, a lot of the public action on the Ohio State Penn State game, which is 4.5 point line in favor of the Buckeyes, is going Penn State's way, which
really
makes absolutely no sense to him, me, or I would think anybody with a functioning brain. I'm not sure what's going on there.
Does Ohio, and forgive my ignorance, is there any kind of COVID issue or injury?
No,
we don't know about that.
All I can think of is that casual bettors are looking at the recent history of the Penn State-Ohio State series, and is expecting that Penn State's going to be able to come up and nip them, without accounting for the fact that Ohio State is appreciably better than they were in those last couple of years, and Penn State's, if not appreciably worse, certainly worse.
Well, I mean, listen, Ohio State, right, is a legit national title contender.
One seed, no doubt about it, no question.
I mean, these are teams that can definitively make a run and win it all here when it's all said and done. Now, again, that doesn't mean on the whole on a given night type thing. And listen, if Penn State is dropping threes, right? I mean, and we've seen that throughout the season. If this team gets a couple of guys that are hot, and it certainly has guys that are capable of being hot, I mean, it's not going to be the upset of the century that Penn State knocks off Ohio State. But I'm having a hard time seeing how this game is all that close with the way Ohio State is playing. And again, I get that college kids, the short memories and all of that. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. I don't see how that Nebraska game doesn't linger and affect your mindset.
To be fair, now again, this is maybe a Pat Chambers thing. I don't know. We're projecting this year. We're just casting stones in the dark. It was about as reliable as Old Faithful that every year Penn State, no matter how bad they were, would always come up and nip some top-ranked team.
Yep.
I am off the top of my head forgetting which season it was. I want to say maybe 2017. Penn State was just putrid, and they had an absolutely terrible team. And yet, like Michigan came in here and they were ranked 4th or something or 6th, and we beat them in Happy Valley. It was the last home game of the season because I remember it was Nick senior day for Nick Colella and Sasha Borovniak, because I think they both had clutch plays down the stretch. They hit free throws or hit baskets or whatever. And I thought it was cool that those two guys who had stuck with the program through a lot of thick and thin managed to play a role in what was a really fun win, even though the season itself was basically garbage. So maybe that's another thing. Maybe people are thinking, hey, more often than not, Penn State's found a way to get Ohio State's number, and every year they get some top-ranked team snapping. And so what the heck? Here's $50 and a wing and a prayer. I don't know. I have no rational explanation for it.
Yeah, I mean, and again, it's basketball, and I mean, we've not just with Penn State, I mean, every year you have games that are just inexplicable regarding outcomes, and again, it's just not.
Ironhead, listen, we live in a world where Howie Roseman can have some of the worst drafts in the NFL, sign a quarterback to a $128 million deal, and then trade him like 12 months later for pennies on the dollar and still have a job. Anything is possible.
Well, and listen, Ohio State, right? Like, you could see why this team might not be especially geared up for this matchup with the Nittany Lions, right? Like, you could see Ohio State thinking to itself, we could probably sleepwalk through this one a bit.
Right.
And Penn State, obviously, is going to be, I do think they'll be fired up. Again, I think, to me, the confidence has to have been shaken by that Nebraska loss. I'd love to be wrong about that, and maybe I will be when the game tips off tonight. But I do think Penn State's going to come out extremely motivated, excited to have the opportunity, all of that. And again, I don't know what Ohio State's emotional state is going to be going into this game, because this isn't a game that you're circling if you're a Buckeyes fan or player on the schedule here down the stretch. So who knows? Again, we'll see what happens.
Lulling the opposition to complacency with your lack of talent has been the go-to move for Penn State basketball for quite some time.
I will say it would be a pretty remarkable week if you both lose to Nebraska and beat Ohio State for any program. I mean, that is the equivalent.
That would be the most Penn State basketball thing to happen, though. Now you're starting to turn me. Now I understand the public money all of a sudden.
Yeah,
sure. Okay.
It would be the equivalent of in football losing to Rutgers and then turning around the following week and knocking off the Buckeyes football program. I mean, I guess it could happen. It just seems kind of unlikely. Penn State wrestling, a big final weekend here, big meet with the Ohio State. It's a dual meet that I really think, at least on paper, for whatever it's worth, Penn State should win. But I think there are a lot of really good, intriguing matchups individually, and I do think, much like the Michigan meet on Sunday, this is one of those in this COVID-shortened season and everything. It's just one of these meets that's going to be beneficial for both of these teams, all of the kids that get the opportunity to compete, and just get that feel and look for, for the most part, up and down the lineup, good to better than good opposition. So I do think this is going to be, again, win or lose for the individuals. These will be bouts that will benefit Penn State going into the postseason. And I think it'll benefit Ohio State too. Again, I just think if you're a wrestler or a competitor in anything, right, the more experience you get against other top competition, it helps you learn, okay, this is where I'm at. These are the things I need to work on. Joe Lee knows now that he's got to work on his bottom game coming off of a couple of his matches this season. And I think that's something that, that he's going to take to heart. And what type of improvement, how much improvement you can make, we'll see. That's kind of the part of the game here. To me, the most intriguing storyline, and I don't have the inside information that people are looking for, but to me, who does go at 149 for Penn State here is a really big deal. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see one, who Penn State throws out, and two, how they do, because Sammy Sasso is right there, and definitely one of the two or three guys that could win the national title here in 2021. And so I think it's that's going to be intriguing. And I'm really excited to just see how Robbie Howard does against Malik Heintzelman. I think Heintzelman is one of those guys that is clearly an All-American contender. I suspect he'll get to that round of 12 and will be one of those guys that either just falls short of the podium or gets on there and finishes in the kind of 6, 7, 8 range is what I would expect for Heintzelman. He's again ranked 10th this week. But it's a really good gauge here for Robbie Howard, who, again, just has not had the opportunity to really get the normal college experience that you would expect as a freshman. And I think, again, what he did last week against Medley of Michigan was a really gutsy effort. But this will be coming off of that and getting that opportunity under your belt, having a few more days to go to work and get more condition and all of that. I just think, again, a great opportunity here against Heintzelman. And again, win or lose, I think this is one of those bouts that you're going to like having in your hip pocket heading to the Big Ten tournament at the end of the season. So I think this is a really intriguing dual meet for Penn State. And then just the bizarre situation this season where Penn State's home opener will be the season finale on Monday against Maryland. That's obviously a dual meet Penn State should win handily. And then the interesting part about that, and we'll talk more about the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club event on Tuesday, but for this coaching staff, it is interesting. You have Ohio State Friday night, big dual meet, and then Monday night is a big deal because it is the only opportunity these kids will have to compete in Rec Hall this season. Obviously, they'll host the Big Ten championships, but that'll be over at the Jordan Center. So, only opportunity to compete in Rec Hall this season. So that's going to be a big deal. And then the very next night, the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club live event, 5, will be held. And some really neat matchups there, I think, highlighted by Kyle Dake, who will take on, I've had a couple people ask me, wait a second, is this like a tag team situation? No, it's 2 separate matches, but he will wrestle both Vincenzo Joseph and Jason Nolf, which hats off to Kyle Dake, a pretty special kid to be willing to be able to do that. And, I think having an opportunity to watch any of those kids compete right now is just fun for wrestling fans, but I think it's going to be another neat event. And again, we'll talk more about that on next Tuesday's show. But really curious to see how Penn State finishes up the very abbreviated regular season here for wrestling and what kind of momentum and feel they have going into the Big Ten championships as well. And then, the other thing, Chris, just Penn State hockey is also, again, this COVID situation is just screwing up with everybody. And obviously the hockey program is certainly feeling the effects of it. And you feel for those kids too, because the momentum was there and it was feeling like this team was in a really good position, right?
No doubt. Look,
really fun hockey.
Just, in terms of where they were set up to go after an 0-5 start, we had absolutely no right to expect a stretch run like the hockey team was set to go on. And it's just been totally derailed. So it's basically a lost season for them at this point. And I think that's very sad. Stinks.
Yeah, and you do hope. Curious to see how things how they are able to perform. And I just don't know, after the type of layoff that they're going to have.
Right.
Notre Dame right now, I think it's March. I'm trying to look it up here. Is it March? It's that first weekend in March anyway. I'm forgetting what the dates are. But then that's it if you do get those in before the Big Ten. So obviously that's going to be a big couple of games if you're able to get them to just, again, get back out there and get that game feel before the tournament begins. March 5th and 6th are the two games at the moment. Still on the schedule.
It's very hard for me to imagine, given some of the just deficiencies and places where this team, which really is in kind of a rebuilding phase this season,
sure.
is going to have no matter what. For them to basically go into the Big Ten tournament cold and have to win it to go to the postseason, I mean, it would be a great story, but I don't see it happening.
Yeah, the one thing I will say is if you were to have just two games that you were able to play in that final, whatever it is, month plus, the fact that it is at Notre Dame, which is where the Big Ten tournament will be,
Sure.
right? I mean, that is, to whatever degree it can be a benefit, that is beneficial for the team and the program. But I'm with you. Just having the one weekend there over the final month or so, whatever you get is a bonus. And yeah, I mean, it could be a remarkable Cinderella story here for Penn State, but I think really anything you get at the Big Ten tournament is just going to be icing on the cake. And again, I do think all of this is building up for bigger and better things down the road. So I think
No
getting
doubt.
the experience and having gone through everything that this team has this season, you hope that adversity does reveal character. And again, if it doesn't pay off this season, I really do think this program is in store for some pretty special stuff here within the next 2 years.
Yeah, and I think, again, this season, what we've seen from Guy Godowski gives me even more confidence than I already had that he is absolutely
sure.
the guy for the long haul for this
sure.
program, because he's built it up. He's kept them consistent when they had the talent that was sufficient to really contend at a national level. They did that. And now, even as you go through the ebbs and flows of every college program, you have ups and downs when you lose some talented kids. For him to be able to keep them focused to a tough start and improving over the course of the season, and again, like poised to maybe go on a pretty special run, given the way the year had started and the expectations for the team. And like we talked when I was in here on Tuesday, Ironhead, about how lucky we've been the last few decades to see some great coaches come through Penn State. I think Guy is well set up to be another one of those names if he sticks around Happy Valley.
Yeah, I
hope he does.
100%. I just think, again, he quickly established the culture that he wanted within the program, and the talent level obviously has been there, and you can see it's young, but I mean the talent is there on that roster this season, and I really do think they're going to be in the running anyway for a Frozen Four appearance here over the next 2 or 3 seasons. I mean,
I think so too.
That caliber of hockey that's going to be played, and you've seen flashes of it here this year in the last couple of weekends before. That Wisconsin series was just, if you're a hockey fan, it was just a fun watch. Did see today too, just a couple of other quick hitters before we wrap things up. The Ivy League, which of course has not competed in winter sports due to COVID, has announced that they are now going to forego any spring sports as well. So the spring season for the Ivy League is out, and that really does impact some of the, they've got some good baseball, but like lacrosse and I mean some of the sports that they have are very good, and so we've seen it in wrestling. It certainly has impacted the overall depth in college wrestling this season for sure, and I do think having the Ivy Leagues out hurts for a lot of the so-called Olympic sports or non-revenue sports, however you want to phrase it. It's the Ivy League is a significant presence in many of those sports, and was sorry to see that, but it's pretty consistent with what they've been doing and kind of the standards they're setting for allowing their student athletes to get back into competition. And what was the other? Was and spring training is underway for Major League Baseball.
I can't imagine why you forgot about that one, Ironhead.
Yeah,
I would think that'd be right top of mind for you.
I will say, just having the eternal hope that all of the teams other than the Pirates have at this time of the year where you can allow yourself to dream that, hey, this could be a year again. Outside of Pirates fans, I think everybody in baseball can at least allow themselves to think, if everything goes right, we could be a team that can make a run this year. It is nice to have just that hope and that thought of spring when you look out the window here in Happy Valley this week and see the crap that's been coming down.
Very true.
So, obviously Pirates fans already know to give up on their season, but I think for everybody else, again, it's exciting and kind of fun to just have baseball back. And I'll be curious to see what happens with the spikes and how that works out with fans, but also just kind of how this rearranged minor league system works for Major League Baseball overall.
Yeah,
I do think here it is going to be a very good product and a very good thing. I don't think fans, the casual fans, it's going to be pretty much the exact same experience.
Yeah,
that you
sure.
come to expect. Hopefully we have that fan experience, and I've been talking with the predictions as to how this is going to play out this summer and even next fall, very widely depending on who you're talking to.
Don't it? Hey, man, it's
what people
it's
thinking.
February. It is miserable outside today. Let's not do the next fall talk just now.
I'm with you. I'm okay with that.
The only prediction I want to make confidently about next fall is that Carson Wentz is going to play 75.01% of the Colts snaps in 2020.
God bless you. Let's hope for your sake and all Eagles fans everywhere that's the case. We appreciate, as always, your tuning in. Goon, we wish you the best, a speedy recovery. Hopefully, you and I will be back together at Quaker Steak and Lube next Tuesday. Again, we want to thank Quaker Steak and Lube. Encourage you to head down there, enjoy a great meal, or call for takeout. Our thanks also to Lion Country Kia, the title sponsor of the Goon and Ironhead show, and of course to Blaze Alexander, Lion Country Kia. That just wonderful people at both places that just do a terrific job of taking care of their customers and really going the extra mile. And as we keep talking about, especially with our sponsors, but we are really impressed with the local businesses and the efforts that have been made here during these extremely trying times, and just continue to encourage you, especially with our sponsors, but really with all of the local businesses. If you have the opportunity, get out, support them. I'm telling you, folks are doing the very best they can here to try to make everything as amenable for customers and clients as they can, and anything you can do to help out the local businesses, we just would strongly encourage you to do that.
Yeah, man, I'll tell you what, I grew up in a little town in Pennsylvania, and there is just enough of that vibe around State College. It kind of reminds me of where I grew up. Yeah. And one of the things about a small town is if your business isn't well known to be trustworthy and providing good customer service, even in the best of times, you get a little difficulty getting by. But when things really start to get tight, the ones that survive are the ones that people trust and the ones that people know. So just talk about the sponsors you guys have on this show. Like, these businesses are making it through, about as well as can be hoped. And I think a big part of that is because people know them and they can trust them. So when you're in the market, just remember that if you see some of these locally owned places that have made it all the way through this pandemic and survived to the other side, it's probably because they got really good people behind them.
Amen. Folks, we hope you have a terrific weekend. Enjoy the basketball and wrestling and NHL hockey. And for those of you that like it, I guess, NBA, whatever. And we will talk to you next Tuesday. Until then, be good and be safe.
Fire Howie.
Lion Country Kia is offering exceptional deals on your new Kia during Kia's Command the Season event.
We have a nice selection on the 2021 Kia Sportage with various options and prices as low as $26,800, saving you $3,000. Or if you demand big power towing capacity, slip into one of the 2021 Kia Sorrentos available on our lot, starting at $32,680.
Discover why Kia drivers throughout the area come to Lion Country Kia or visit online at lioncountrykia.com.
Introducing the new dusted Ghost Pepper at Quaker Steak and Lube. 11,700 SHUs of fire dusted on award-winning wings. Try it, or are you afraid of the heat?
Hi, Johnny Broom here. If you're in the market for a new Hyundai or a pre-owned car, truck, van, or SUV, nobody beats a Blaze Alexander deal. But don't take my word for it.
Hey, Goon says tell him Johnny sent you.
Hey, tell him Johnny sent ya.
Tell him Johnny sent you.
Wait, tell him Juan or tell him Johnny sent you?
Tell him Johnny sent you.
Here at Bill Pickle's Tap Room, we say,
Tell him Johnny sent you.
and remember,